So most of you here know that I went on a 90-day cut in the summer. To be honest, I had not done one in years, but I was just feeling lost. I honestly felt like I had this little identity crisis. I had just gotten married. I had bought this house. I wasn't prioritizing me. I felt like everything else was moving so fast around me. I just didn't know who I was. I was like, do I still love fitness? I feel like my body doesn't feel like it usually does. And I just had gained quite a bit of weight and I just didn't feel like myself anymore, which honestly, that is okay to admit. If you are constantly on your A game, that wouldn't be life, right? A lot of people say there are no flowers without rain. So always keep that in the back of your mind when you're going through something really tough. Maybe it's a phase in your life. Maybe you're really struggling in your fitness journey. You're struggling through relationships, whatever it is, your career. Just know that there's always a reason and there would be no blossoming and no flowers without rain in it. So I started this cut originally out of love. And there's no better self-love than discipline. I really do believe that saying because I feel like there's some beauty in you knowing that at the end, the result will be worth it. That you really ignore all of your temporary feelings, the instant gratification we want now with social media, buying things on Amazon, whatever it is, right? Like that's what we're trained for. And like the utmost important self-respect, self-love is discipline. And I think that is beautiful. It's like, there's something better, even though it's going to be a tough road. So I did the 90-day cut. I had lovely, fantastic results. I was so proud of myself. And then I went to a 3-month honeymoon. Okay. And oddly enough, I was able to maintain this cut and I wanted to go over it because now it's been 7 months. I've still seen amazing progress in this, but I honestly do feel like I've been able to keep off that unwanted weight and that unwanted stubborn fat that I had. And I know that's like a buzzy word and I'm not here to be like, how to burn fat, but like I'm being honest with you where I actually do believe I got back to a weight that I was comfortable with. I got back to a physique that I remembered and I loved, and it makes me feel more agile and I feel like I can do more things in this physique. And that's me just being honest. Like I don't need trolls coming after me being like, you didn't love your body. I did love my body. But there is nothing wrong with wanting to improve yourself and challenge yourself. Keep that in mind, okay? Because people will tear you down. I've been in this fitness industry long enough to know people will be like, well, you didn't say this. And it's like, that's not the point. I just want to be here for the girls and the guys that are like, I feel lost and nobody will acknowledge how I'm feeling. I am the one acknowledging how you feel. So with that being said, don't forget to like and subscribe to YouTube channel and let's get started. You may ask, Sav, I'm new here. What is a cut? I'm so glad you asked. A great question. In fitness, a cut typically refers to a phase of intentional and controlled weight loss. Often, you're usually reducing body fat while maintaining muscle mass. This phase is super common among individuals who just want to maybe achieve a leaner or more defined physique. During a cut, we usually aim to have a calorie deficit by consuming fewer calories than you expend through exercise and daily activities. This deficit really encourages your body to kind of tap into those fat stores for energy, leading to that gradual fat loss over time. In addition to managing calorie intake, a cut often involves adjusting macronutrient ratios, prioritizing protein intake, just preserve the muscle mass that you put on, and incorporating cardiovascular exercise to really help when you're on a cut. The duration and intensity of cuts are always varied. Great. So glad we went over what a cut is. Now you're like, Sav, how do you maintain a cut? Because think about it. You really change your physique. But do you just like go back to eating normal? Do you increase your calories? Like, what does that look like? So glad you asked. Great question. So usually after completing a cut, the shift is really to focus on maintenance, which just really means maintaining any progress that you made in the cut without it being too stressful or too intense on your body. You really want to just prevent that excess weight gain that some people have. So there's a couple ways to go about this. You could do reverse dieting, which just means you gradually increase your caloric intake instead of just like going all to nothing. And that's really what I focused on. Even though I went into my honeymoon, I was really careful, just slowly increasing my macros and still tracking them for a little bit, just to like remember, hey, I need this amount of protein, I need this amount of fats, whatever it may be. The reason behind this is it really helps your metabolism adjust gradually and just helps minimize any fat gain that you may get. 2 is monitoring your macronutrients. And what I mean by this and how it's different than the caloric is you're just going to continue slowly tracking your macronutrients. I'm well aware tracking macros is not for everybody, so I'm not telling you have to, but for me in my cut, it was so helpful because I felt lost. I didn't know portion exercise, I didn't even know how much protein I should be having because I hadn't tracked anything in years. And I think the real reason I didn't track in years is I had like a little bit of PTSD of being like so controlled and regimen back in the day, where I just didn't want to fall back into that. So I really viewed it as like a science experiment and a challenge, opposed to really looking at the numbers. Like I wasn't paying attention to the calorie intake. I was just like, oh, I don't have enough protein. Okay, cool. I'm going to add more protein into my diet. But really at the end, even after a cut, before a cut, whatever in life, you should really try and focus in having like an adequate amount of macronutrients. Macronutrients are carbs, fats, and proteins. If we have imbalances, that's what can make you tired. That's what can make you cause weight gain. There's like so many different variations as to like if you didn't have the proper amount of macronutrients, how it would affect your body. 3 is keeping up with your resistance training. So during my cut, I really tried to have a progressive plan where I was trying to increase the weight I was lifting while I was at the gym slowly. And I think this is where it gets a lot of people, is they'll go into this challenge and then they'll be like, okay, cool. I lost all this weight. I don't need to work out anymore. Or they just fall back into their old habits. The entire point of this is to make it a lifestyle and make you really incorporate resistance training for your whole life. And I know that sounds daunting, but just to add it to your everyday or 3 times a week routine is so important just for our health in general. 4 is cardiovascular exercise. And what I mean by this is a lot of times when we're in a cut, we really increase our exercise. We increase our movement. That's just because you're trying to burn more calories than you're consuming. I don't think that's a bad thing to keep up with. I think maybe you don't need to do the excessive amount anymore, but always try and switch up and add in cardio health in general. A lot of people are like, I don't like to run, or I don't like to sprint, or whatever it may be. I'm only going to lift weights. It just depends on how your body reacts. Next up is mindful eating. That's just once again practicing your mindful eating with your macronutrients and just not falling back into the phase of, eating out every single night with fast food, or not giving yourself protein throughout the day, or not having your greens, whatever it is. Like just being mindful of what you're putting in your body, because what you put in your body is how you're going to feel. Lastly is lifestyle factors. And what I mean by this is a lot of times people go into a cut, or they like get training, whatever it is, whatever you've done in the past, and you've fallen back to those old habits. The entire point is to make this a lifestyle. Like I said, I'm going to drill this into your brain. It's going to annoy you, but honestly, if you have not picked this up as a habit, as a lifestyle, you really need to keep going with it, or at least like try and figure out how to incorporate this, because if you were to just give up completely, why did you do all the hard work, All right, now that we've gone over what we need to do after a cut, I figured I would go into the 5 major changes that not only help me maintain it, but also it's been 7 months. I've still been able to have a lot of success and maintenance with it. Not only to mention, like, I feel so much better. I am so thankful that I went into that cut. I just wanted to go over my little 5 things that not a lot of people touch on when they go into like a shreddy season or cutting. Because let's be real, a cutting phase should not be sustainable. We need to make it a lifestyle. So I feel like I've hacked that a little bit. Number 1 was probably the most important thing that I learned in my cut, was falling in love with all forms of movement. And that sounds really cheesy, but I'm not kidding you. Like, the older I get, I'm 29 now, and like, I just have to be aware of the space I'm taking, who I am, what I'm doing, what am I spending my time on, what is my movement? Because if I'm just a walker, that's not going to do me justice than if I'm a lifter, I'm a cross trainer. As you get older, you really just want to try and figure out how you want to allocate your time, and you want to figure out what kind of movement you like. And there is nothing wrong with having this quote unquote identity crisis and loving other things. I'm just huge into doing every form of movement because I don't know what I like. And that is okay. You can start over. I am here telling you I have built this platform showing I'm a lifter, and now I'm more of like a balanced lifestyle girl, and that's okay. And I don't really care what people have to say about that. I'm so much happier for it. Really what my schedule has looked like, I started the cut with a 5-day lifting split, and now I brought it down to 3 days. I still lift. I do an upper body, a leg day, and then I do a full body. Then I do Pilates. Occasionally I do yoga if I have time for it. I always make sure to sauna and stretch, work on my mobility. And then I also just do fun cardio activities like running and pickleball and just doing those kinds of things that I enjoy when I hang out with people, even walking with friends. But like, when I tell you I didn't have that mindset for the longest time, and I think a lot of you have this where you're like, I must train in the gym, otherwise I won't see success. That is not always true, and be aware of that. Also, if you get back into the gym, you're gonna have those gains because you've switched up your routine. An example of something that I've switched up is doing sprints. Literally took a break off of sprints after my cut for like 7 months, and I just started incorporating them again. And like when I tell you, I feel so good, and like I feel more energetic after them, and they take like 5 to 10 minutes of my time at the gym. Chef's kiss. So I stopped doing sprints and now I'm adding them back in. 2 is you're not a robot with your food. What I mean by this is we are not these robots that are like, oh, I must get these amount of macros in. If you don't get your macros in, that is okay. The world is not ending. Let's say it together. That is okay. The world is not ending. I think a lot of us used to track our macros or do track our macros, and I've seen this so much on social media, freaking out, trying to eat something to get their certain macronutrients in. And it's like, dude, at the end of the day, it's not worth it. It's not worth stressing out over. If you have a couple days where you don't hit it, that's okay. I always try and tell the girls that I train, like, just track your protein intake at first, because that usually is like the stem of our problem, is we're not having enough protein if we are lifting. And how I started doing this was I just slowly leaned off of tracking my macros. I like maybe would only count 3 days a week instead of 5. Then it became 2 days, then it became 1 day, and then it became just my protein intake. And now I feel like I have a really good relationship with my macros, where if I feel like it's off, I'll just track it once a week. Also, don't forget that after a cut, you're not really in a deficit. So you need to figure out what your macronutrients would be for that maintenance. And that's a huge thing as well in this, is like not constantly being in that deficit mindset. 3 is find meals that you love. Okay, this shouldn't be boring. I'm so sick of seeing gross meal prep online where it's like chicken and rice, or like I recently saw a burger and I was like, how is she meal prepping this for like every single day this week without that bun being soggy? It didn't make sense. So a huge thing that I did during this cut was I tried to challenge myself to making a new meal every single week. It was so much fun. I actually figured out like the portions that I needed because I was tracking my macronutrients. And then also I got to like play around with certain proteins. Like I got into cooking salmon. I got into cooking shrimp. I got into cooking beef. I never used to eat beef. So it's just something that's really fun, is like figure out what you love. You don't need an expensive cookbook. You could literally, why did I say cookbook? But you literally can just go on Pinterest and look up recipes. It'll take you 2 seconds, and just go to the grocery store. Don't tell me you don't have time. I know we all got time to go on Pinterest. Also, there are so many meal prep companies. There's even like local meal prep companies that you could use if you don't actually have the time, if you're working, whatever it may be, and just like find out if that fits your finances. 4 is I became boring. And what I mean by this is the best kind of boring. I really just learned how to have boundaries in this. It was almost like I was doing the 75 hard challenge, but really I was just doing my own cut and like just figuring out what I wanted in my life. I actually ended up stopping a lot of friendships that I had back then and just like not pursuing them. I wasn't mad at anybody. I wasn't like creating any drama. I wasn't bad mouthing anybody. I just really evaluated who I wanted in my life, and also just saw like, do their values align with mine? Like, do I feel good when I hang out with them? Or are they an energy taker? Things like that. And then I just slowly stopped reaching out to those people. 7 months later, I feel so much happier for what I did. And like, I'll still see those people from time to time and say hi. But like for me, as I get older, I really just want to protect my peace and protect my circle. And that's okay. That's okay to admit it. Like once we become adults, we kind of figure out what relationships we like and what we don't. Along with this is like, I really stopped drinking as much. I now maybe drink like once a month. Maybe if I have somebody come visit, I'll drink more often. But I really did this rule of thumb where I just don't keep alcohol in the house, and I'll have things like mocktails or Olippops. Even if I go to parties and I just don't feel like drinking, I'll just bring one of these, or usually somebody has like a LaCroix, put it in a red Solo cup, and nobody knows. And like, yeah, you may be the quote unquote boring friend, but like you'll wake up feeling so much better the next day. And for me, I would wake up and feel like I had so much energy on the weekends, opposed to just like spending the whole day hungover and then drinking again at the beach or something like that. And like, to each their own, right? Like the boring quote unquote is like different for everybody. I just know I got some flack for things like that when I did start my cut, but also I know the real friends really supported me, and they don't care what I end up doing unless it makes me happy. Last but not least is give yourself grace. When you are in this process of like, you went through a cut and you're trying to maintain this and you're really trying to change over into like a new leaf, you have to give yourself grace. If you just completely fall off the wagon and give up completely, that's where you go wrong, okay? Say that with me. We go wrong when we fall off the wagon completely. Let's give ourselves grace if we have a bad day, if we have a bad week, if we have a bad 2 weeks, but get your booty back in the gym, and it shouldn't be that breaking point of like, shoot, what do I do now? Like, you need to figure out what those staples were in your cut or whatever it is, that new leaf that you're trying to have, and how do you stick with it? Like I said, the best form of self-love and self-respect is figuring out those boundaries and figuring out what you want to incorporate in your life. All right, I hope you liked this YouTube video. I know it's a little different, but I want to do it just a couple, like almost a series in this of like, let's sit down, let's chat. We don't need any fancy lights. We don't need any fancy looks. I just wanted to chat with you and be like, bro, this is what I did, because so many people have asked, and I feel like I almost hacked this code of like doing it in a balanced way. And I've been wanting to do that for my whole life because I'm someone that used to be so extreme. I would give up completely. I would go on these crazy diets that were unachievable. I would eat the gross meal prep chicken and rice because it was boring. I wouldn't drink alcohol ever because I was scared of the calories. Like, I was somebody that I was so extreme, and a lot of you saw that in the beginning of my fitness journey. Like, when I started posting online, I was the most extreme I'd ever been. Did I feel like it was unhealthy? Not necessarily. I still ate properly. I still worked out properly, but like, I was just so mentally trapped in my brain, and I was so strict. And now as I get older, I'm like, life is too short. So I just wanted to share that with you. But with that being said, do not forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and code word for this video is ketchup. If you've made it to the end of this video, comment ketchup so I know, and also comment like what you think. I want to know your feedback if you've done this, if you think it's helpful, and I will see you next time.